Quickly, before the video starts, I streamed this live over at twitch.tv/ballisticren, where I also play games. I stream weekdays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, so come stop by and say hi. I can't wait to see you over there. Now on with the video. So yeah, now we've got a Toesies. The OnlyFan empire is or OnlyFans. Empire is collapsing. That's a slightly different meaning fan versus fans. Only fan or just for fans kind of thing, you know. But only fans. And yeah, I could see why in several reasons, such as you're draining people of all their money. These men are forming parasocial bonds to these women who aren't actually forming reciprocating this, and either A, these men aren't falling for it anymore, or B, people just haven't had enough and all that. So there's several ways that really could be caused. To me, I'd just like be like, well, I can't get away with it on YouTube, so just OF. Leonid Ravitsky dies at 43. Ooh, that's a young age. I wonder what happened. Now, OnlyFans, OF, what I don't know what I can get away with on YouTube. It is. It's not necessarily a sexual site, or it's not explicitly like that. It's like Twitter or in with the sexual content, or with or Patreon with the fact that you can pay for things, right? It's kind of like you can do it, but you don't have to do it. It's it's not it's not it's not the hub, basically. It's not like a must pay version of the hub. You're allowed to upload whatever we want there, and including that. And in fact, they tried to get rid of that because of investment. Of course, that didn't work out because a lot of e-girls really locked onto that site and made it what it is today. No one. Oh, stupid! I keep forgetting to uncensor it, but like no one goes onto the site because they want to support their favorite creator with like some safe for work cartoon. Like it's like, oh yeah, I'm a safe for work animator on YouTube. Go to my OF to go support me, and you won't see anything sexual, but you will see some great cartoons. And it's like, no one's going over there for that. They're going to Patreon. Let me start that over
Currently,
again.
the media space has been dominated by
I guess
how much some top earners are making on. But what hasn't really been discussed is how the company has lost billions of dollars in valuation in a very short amount of time.
Oof.
And things.
Also, I just wanted to interject again because Fillion, the VTuber Fillion, has been on the competing site, which operates kind of similarly in the methods of Fansly, which I think has not nearly as big, but it's not like in the cultural zeitgeist like OF, but it's got the same dichotomy going on there too. I think like it's, yes, you can upload safe for work things, which she does or did or will do in the future. Maybe I don't know what's going on with that. But you don't have to, but most people do, and it's kind of the same idea, I think.
This just got even more messy because is now in a very bad situation after the CEO passed away.
Yeah.
So essentially, you have one of the biggest platforms in the world, especially when it comes to that profitability per employee metric that you've probably seen online.
Is possibly the most revenue efficient company in the world, and no one comes even close. Yeah, because here's the thing, like it's all about valuation versus actual income, because Nvidia, Apple, Meta, I think even Alphabet, even a lot of these companies really are valued at like trillions of dollars and even make hundreds of billions of dollars in actual gross revenue, but their profit margins are slim, if even existent, right? So yeah, per employee, it's like if it's 100, if company is making $100 with 100 employees, that's $1 per employee, right? But like, it seems like, so what I'm trying to say is that if you streamline it, you knock it down to 50 employees, it's $2 per employee, whatever, right? And what I'm getting at is these companies are probably way overstaffed. That's why it's like 3.6 million, 3.3 million, blah, blah, blah per employee, despite having insane amounts of revenue. Where even if OF is only making, let's say, a quarter of the overall revenue, if they have 1% the employees of all these other companies, they're still making a ton of money per employee.
And they just lost the one person running it, and almost nobody knew who he really was, and that he.
So, and that's the thing. Is there like a backup plan? Like, are there investor owners? Like, is there like a clear succession plan going on here then? I don't know. But I was not expecting it to be the owner dies. I wasn't expecting that to be the Onlyfans collapse. I was expecting, these men actually started to, become rational, or these women just weren't making the same money or something like that because of competitions, something like that. But by the sound of it, it's that the owner has involuntarily retired. Let's put it like that.
Existed. So the dude never gave interviews. There's really no real footage of him online. And one of the only pictures of him online was the one from his LinkedIn that had no ties to the platform whatsoever. So that's a little bit interesting. But for years,
you're sure it's the right guy then, because people share names. So if there's no LinkedIn trace, like if the profile in question doesn't have a like the LinkedIn profile doesn't have like a proper OF, OnlyFans, whatever, I'm not sure what I should be saying. If it doesn't have a proper like tie to that, or even is it like certain that's the right guy? Because if it doesn't say, OnlyFans CEO, whatever, or have it like connected, or like even sure that's the right guy.
He was quietly making billions running one of the most controversial platforms on the internet. But then in just the last month, he passed away and left the entire business in limbo. So, I mean, to catch everyone up to speed here, OF was created in 2016 by a guy named Tim Stokely. He was the youngest kid in a family from Essex, England. And he spent years trying to launch
it's an English company.
business after internet business, and had a whole lot of failures. And the guy burned through a whole bunch of his own money and goodwill from friends and family, to put it lightly. But his dad, Guy, real name by the way, he watched multiple projects go essentially nowhere, and
Guy is in fact a real name.
Funded more than a few of them. So when Tim came back with yet another idea, he went, okay, here's 10
for asking him for a loan of £10,000. That is honestly not too bad. I mean, it's not great. You're not making $1 million instantly, but it's not bad.
£1,000, and that's the last one I'm funding. Little did he know, though, that money became the seed funds. And the original structure was simple. Creators set a monthly price, subscribers paid it, and the platform keeps 20%. And I guess
interesting. It's actually an interesting thing, because there's a lot more money to potentially be made. I assume there is a fixed revenue split there. Like, it's like, okay, you get to set your own price, for still charging you like 30, 40, whatever percent. Twitch doesn't even allow you to do that, man. It would be interesting if Twitch allowed like independent price setting.
Creator walks away with 80%. Tim's original pitch wasn't necessarily focused on adult content, but the idea
20% split. That's not actually too bad, considering the standard is like 30%. for the platform, and Twitch is 50.
Idea had been open to anyone who could build a paying audience, including adult creators, since 2017. And from the start, it was a family operation in the early days, with Tim's brother, Tom, running the operations, and their father, Guy, handling the finances. Guy, I guess, was just their guy and father.
Right.
Now, one group, I guess they figured out the model faster than anyone else, and that showed up in some serious numbers, because in 2018, the platform was getting traction, but running headfirst into some structural problems. The payment processors that made it possible to, actually collect the money from the subscribers weren't a big fan of the adult side of their business. And obviously...
Now, here's the thing. Because people buy things. People need to buy things. People need to be able to use their credit cards and all this. This is the same thing going on with Japan and manga, because I think even relatively safe for work ones are getting shut down because payment processors like Visa and MasterCard don't like them. My opinion is, unless there is a traceable money laundering scheme, you should be free to spend your money. I don't care what you're spending your money on. If it's legal, if what you're viewing is legal to view, it's not, CP or something like that. That's one of the most extreme like internet things I could think of. It's like not explicit murder, things like that. And then obviously the thing shouldn't be shut down. And if there is no root strong evidence of money laundering, it shouldn't be shut down. And even then, payments should be suspended, not outright banned in the money laundering case, unless it is proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's a scam, money laundering, whatever. Then, of course, you take the money, return it to the rightful owners of said money, because you basically stole it in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, I don't think it is the responsibility of, or it should be the obligation, or whatever the case may be, for a payment processor to be like, well, I don't like what you're doing, so I'm just going to not provide the service to you. I'm trying to think if there might be like some way for the government to step in and form like some universal payment processing system that, that can't be censored directly by the payment processors. I don't know. So it's like, oh yeah, the government has, or like something like that. The government or someone has like this whole system set up to where it just auto links to the payment processors, and you can turn on and off which payment processors you want to accept, and so on. And the payment processors can't really do anything about it because, freedom of trade and business, because that's like the whole argument with like discriminatory business practices, is that you're inhibiting trade. And so they could probably make the argument that, which of course the IRS really hates, because if you inhibit trade, you inhibit the exchange of cash, and therefore you inhibit the exchange of cash that was previously untaxed, that it can now be taxed. So the US government could probably make the argument that these payment processors dabbling in this are like actually inhibiting the free market and trade and all that, and the IRS can't do their job, which, I mean, in my opinion is, fine if the IRS doesn't do their job. But I pay my taxes. I don't like it, but I do it. But anyways, it's just, I think the IRS, the government could step in and be like, the IRS isn't getting their revenue because you're, blocking them from being able to, you're blocking the free market, so they're losing out on revenue, so on and so forth. I think that's definitely something the federal government could argue and be like, payment processors, you got to open up, say with Onlyfans and all that, allow people of differing political ideologies to, buy and trade and participate in the free market, because guess what? That's tax money right there. That's money we can now tax that we weren't able to tax before. So open up Visa, MasterCard, Amex, because we need our tax revenue that we would not otherwise get.
No payment processing means no business, full stop. So Tim sold it. And the buyer was someone that almost nobody had heard of, and nobody would really hear of him for many years to come. His name was Leonid Ravinsky, who was born in Odessa, Ukraine in 1982. His family relocated to Chicago while he was still a kid, and he studied economics at Northwestern University and graduated in 2002. And from that point forward, he essentially built an entire career at, scaling internet companies while keeping his name almost completely out of circulation. And even after he became the owner of one of the most talked about platforms on the planet, a single photo of him made the rounds, the same one over and over, which was attached to a LinkedIn profile that described him as the president at Leo.com, and completely left OF out of the picture. So essentially what we know about this
I'm sure, like, if you're just some random investor, you don't really want your name attached to the company, and maybe they just do Leo.com. Leo.com is like some holding company, some like shell company, whatever the case, and right there on the Leo.com website, it's like our companies or our brands or whatever the case may be, and OnlyFans is there, and they're able to be like, okay, connect the dots.
He lived in a $19 million waterfront property in Miami, but he gave 0 interviews. He made no public statements. He was, I guess, for every practical purpose, someone who did not want to be found. What he was always doing, however, was running his own things, and he'd been building internet businesses since he was a teenager. And by his mid-20s, he'd built
all created the late 90s, early 20s. Ravinsky and his Glenview, Illinois-based business, Tanya. Okay.
Built and operated more than 10 websites, developing a deep understanding in, I guess, the mechanics of adult content or entertainment, and how that whole payment structure works and how he can get that to work without getting banned. And since he understood how this industry worked, when he was presented with the chance to buy, he did so in 2018 for $30 million. And it's safe to say that was a phenomenal investment for him, because in 2019, the platform processed around $300 million in total payments and cleared around $7 million in profit. Then a year later, that gross payment volume hit $2.2 billion. Then by 2021, it was approaching $5 billion. And
I feel like 2020, 21, something around there. Maybe 2022, I don't know, is when I really started hearing about the site. And I feel like when everyone really started hearing about the site.
These numbers were being announced, but the company files with the UK as required. But Leonid had no interest in turning any of these numbers into some massive press release like many other entrepreneurs would. But then came that moment that probably told you.
So hold on, let me just double check this.
But Leonid's numbers were being announced. Then by 2021, it was approaching.
I just want to make sure, because I think I might have
$5 billion. And none of these numbers were being announced, but the company files with the UK as required. But Leonid had no interest in turning any of these numbers into some massive press release like many other entrepreneurs would. But then,
so clearly, it seems like these numbers were made public, right? I'm going to let him finish. He might say that, oh yeah, the company decided to find outside investment and therefore had to make the numbers public regardless. But in the US, if you're not a publicly traded company, you have no obligation to tell the public your numbers. Like, you cannot look up a private company's financial status or financial status struggles, whatever the case may be, unless they actually decide to come out with those numbers. Now, a public company has to disclose, yeah, we're making this much or whatever because of the public nature of their investments. Maybe some venture capital related companies might have to do that too. I don't know. But by the sounds of it so far, it seems like if you're a UK-based company, you have to announce your numbers.
Came that moment that probably told you more about OF than anything else, because in August of 2021, the platform announced that it was going to ban explicit content. Now, that was confusing to a lot of people.
Yeah, and obviously, payment processors, this is probably in part because payment processors are pulling their, foot or neck or whatever. I can't remember the saying off the top of my head. For whatever reason, it's not coming to me. But, yeah, they're, grabbing OnlyFans and being like, we don't like this, so get rid of it.
Because that kind of sounds like if Burger King announced it was going to stop selling burgers.
True.
So why would they ever do that? Well, it makes sense a little bit later on when you get the full picture. But obviously, the response from the creators on their platform was immediate and very clear. So,
well, yeah, when 90% of your creators are explicit creators, they're going to have a problem with that. Now, of course, like the more moderate creators that may do some like trap, like thirst trap, whatever stuff, maybe not so much, because that might not be explicit enough to fall under that kind of scenario. Kind of like how Twitch allows women to wear, crop tops and bikinis and stuff, but not show areas. Again, I'm not sure what I can get away with on this stuff. But certain areas. But so I don't know if with OnlyFans it was like the same thing. Like, okay, you can wear your like suggestive stuff, or say suggested things, just don't get too explicit with it. And then the creators, and then obviously that's not how OnlyFans works. OnlyFans works by being expressly and unapologetically explicit. And so even if that was the case, even if you could still be suggestive and all that, a lot of the creators would probably still be very much dissatisfied.
6 days later, the ban was reversed, and I guess that just showed the creators that they're the product. They actually have the power.
I mean, yeah, they do have the power. Like that's the thing that other platforms fail to realize, is that they aren't the ones with the power. They aren't the ones making the money. The creators are, right? And so without the creators subscribing to, or without the people subscribing and donating to creators, these platforms are nothing. Because even with these platforms where it's like, okay, you're paying the platform directly to get ad-free viewing or whatever the case may be, there's still this expectation of there being creators to watch, and if there are no creators to watch, then you're just going to cancel that subscription. And even if you don't, these platforms probably aren't making that much money off of the paid tiers, so to speak. So these creators are these platforms are still very much reliant on the creators
platform, because at the end of the day, the platform cannot exist without the creators and the consumers paying for it. So
right.
The reason all this actually matters becomes a whole lot more clear once you look at the numbers, though. Because in 2024, they processed $7.2 billion in total transactions between the fans and the creators. OF's cut of that was about 20%, and that came out to $1.41 billion in net revenue. That is a behemoth of a company. But after expenses, pre-tax profit landed at $684 million, with the entire operation ran by only 46 full-time employees.
That is great. This also goes to show you, why are these other companies, got 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, like these other tech companies. It's like, dude, all these platforms that you stream and upload videos. I'm not going to name certain names because I don't want to I'm not going to out any specific ones. There are a lot of them, but you have these platforms with 2, 3, 4,000 full-time employees, and they're not really needed. You need some front end and back end developers, right? You maybe need some content police, so to speak, to make sure that things don't get too atrocious. And that's about it. I'm trying to think. I don't think, because they don't usually have marketing, so you don't need a marketing team, really. I mean, some of them do marketing, like some social media platforms, for example. Like I've seen, Facebook ads, stuff like that. So depending on, but usually like for example, YouTube. I'm not here to make accusations against YouTube, but YouTube doesn't need a marketing team because YouTube markets itself. This isn't like Facebook versus Twitter versus whatever other obscure social media platform trying to get their name out there, and they're all vying to be the social media platform. It's like, no, YouTube is already the internet video platform. Twitch is already the streaming platform. YouTube obviously competes. There's also Kick. sure, but Twitch is the platform you think of when you think of streaming. So like Twitch doesn't need a marketing budget. And I've seen ads by, YouTube and even, but again, it's not a necessity. TikTok even doesn't need ads. It's already big. It's already in the public zeitgeist. And all it needs to do at this point is just convince you to use it. But and I guess you can make the argument that well, that's what but like when it's the only one doing it, like YouTube is like pretty much the only major like long form, uploading platform, because Twitch, is a strictly live streaming. YouTube obviously does live streaming. It does its own shorts thing to compete with TikTok. But YouTube, from a long form content aspect, point of view, whatever, it's the only one in the game. So it doesn't need to say, hey, come to YouTube because we're, long form. It's like, no, if I was going to upload a long form video, I'd already be doing it to YouTube.
That is insane. And then Leonid's personal payouts track the platform's growth as you would pretty much expect, because in 2021, he collected around $284 million. In 2022, he collected $338 million.
That's growth.
He collected $472
That is a lot of growth.
And then in 2024, he collected $701 million, which
like
works
out, it was like maybe $100 million per year. Now it's actually like doubling from the previous year.
So about
almost
$2 million per day, every day for the entire year, which means the
that's great.
Pulled between 2021 and 2024 were just under $1.8 billion from a company that he paid roughly $30 million for. That might be one of the best investments of all time. But at the same time, the distribution between the creators is wildly uneven because, you have this whole notion where a bunch of people...
Obviously, already successful, e-girls from mainly Twitch are going to already have a predisposed audience that will follow them over there, especially if their whole brand is, being like some simp queen. But, yeah, so... obviously that, and then they fled the market and people are paying $20 a month for their tier 1 already, and they're really not, so even if they want to maybe possibly check out some other creator, they can't because they're not rich enough to be spending $20 on 15 OnlyFans girls each at that. So and again, that's well, first of all, that's assuming they all charge the same. And second of all, assuming it's all the same tier, maybe it's different tiers, and $20 is $20 is $20, whatever. So yeah. Anyways, let's continue.
Would start an OF and make a whole bunch of money, but for the most part, that's not true. It's very similar to how Twitch is in a way. I don't really like drawing comparisons between Twitch and but you have a handful of top streamers on Twitch that make a crazy amount of money,
right?
And then the average streamer makes way below minimum wage, and that's the case with as well. But I mean, that's just a whole nother topic for its own. But the thing is, by 2025, Leonid was...
that's the case for like anything like that. Like if it's independent contracting, the hardest workers are going to make the most, or in this case, the most popular workers, streamers, are going to make the most, and the less popular / less hardworking / whatever won't be. And that's really the thing. Like if you're an independent contractor for like an animation studio, right? You're paid for your work. That's how it is. You're paid for your time. You're paid for your service. You go draw your animation, you get paid for the animation, and it's done. If you work harder, you get paid more. If you're lazier, you don't get so much. That's just how it is. Whereas with, entertainment-based professions, it's just based off your popularity. It's based off how many, which is it's a trade-off, because hard work in a fixed industry like animation, like graphic design, like web building, that is going to guarantee you revenue, right? Whereas hard work in entertainment, it's like people are paying for your popularity. They're paying for your fame. They're not paying for your time. So you could be a streamer who doesn't work at all, basically, who just goes live for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever the case may be, calls it a day, maybe pays an editor to do the work they should have been doing. But hey, people love it for some reason. So even though you're basically doing the bare minimum as a streamer, you're raking in the cash. Whereas this hardworking streamer who streams 8, 12 hours a day, grinds, edits videos like immediately after getting off stream, only gets 4 hours of sleep each day, and is just on a constant grind, is making $100 a month, if that, because they just don't have the same reach. And again, like, obviously, and here's the thing, I'm not saying, diversifying your workforce is a bad thing. If you are a big streamer, you probably should have editors. Streaming is a daily thing, daily work, and editing those streams for, internet content or for YouTube videos or something like that is a daily grind. And you are essentially a president or CEO of a company. Basically, you have sponsorships to handle. You have collabs set up. Maybe you have a manager to help you with that. I don't know, but point is, there's a lot of different things that go into a large into a large channel. So you should divvy it up. There's a reason I only upload a few videos, and I don't do gaming highlights because I just don't have the time to sit there for 18 hours a day going through every stream and cutting 2 hours of streams into 20 minutes. But of course, the reaction content is more manageable because I can just split it up much more evenly.
Looking for a buyer, and it didn't take long for him to realize.
Well, I don't even really need to split it up so much. Just cut out all the, the intro related and outro related things. Maybe somewhere in the middle, if there's like something like I have to get up to get water or something, and I don't want that dead space to be in the final cut, then I'll like scrub through it and cut it. But yeah, video game edits, you got subtitles, blah, blah, you got to cut to your face sometimes, stuff like that. Sometimes I've done that with reaction content, but especially if I become a big streamer and I want to collab with people or something like that, I will in that case, I won't have the time to go in and edit every video and all that. I won't have, because I'll try to be managing collabs and stuff. And I think, honestly, trying to reach out to other creators is a thing you probably if you're going to do anything yourself, that's probably the one thing you should do yourself. That way you're in a more personal contact with them. So, yeah.
Selling this platform is going to be a challenge because on paper, the investment is insane. Over $1.4 billion in annual net revenue, profit margins that most businesses would consider borderline unbelievable, roughly 380 million registered users, and fewer than 50 people on payroll. If you strip the
again, it's an internet business. You just need, it's honestly, like, if you actually treated these tech companies like streamlined corporations, like, basically every physical, like, traditional company is, like, for example, Ford will only hire as many engineers they need to design a new car. They'll only hire as many plant workers as they need to make the car, right? If you look at it like that, Twitch should definitely have under 1,000, maybe 100 to 200 people if you throw in, like, if you want a moderation heavy, space, like I could see Twitch operating with like 50 people. Like, and that's the thing, you don't need these, weekly updates to the platform. So, like, you probably only need like a few developers, and most of your workforce could probably just be management related stuff. Honestly, 50 workers, you could probably fit You could probably fit a whole moderation team into just those 50 workers, or like within those 50 workers. So yeah, you need like devs, moderators, maybe some sound effect people if you want, like if you have like, oh, you press this button, a certain sound effect will happen, blah blah blah. So yeah.
Context and handed someone the financial statements, they would assume they were looking at some sort of tech unicorn that had figured out everything. However, the context is the biggest problem here because a large portion of the institutional investors, the ones with the actual capital to do a deal.
Yeah, they're more traditional. They're more safe bet. Now this thing goes XLs and all that. That's been a thing that's been going on. As long as people have been buying. But yeah, from a more conventional, that's not something you openly admit, right? That's not something that you're like, oh yeah, we know, sexual content sells, so we're just going to do. So no, like institution is going to admit to that. That is like a secret. That's a taboo. That's a taboo that people desire, but it's still a taboo nonetheless. So you don't go out and say it.
Deal at this scale, they operate under something called vice clauses, which are restrictions embedded in their agreements with their own backers that prevent them from putting money into certain categories. Because often,
exactly.
These firms don't.
Because that's the thing. Like vices are very popular, right? Drinking, smoking, adult content. These are all very popular vices, and these are just natural human vices. People want to feel these. People want to feel happy when they're depressed, so they drink, or people have a natural level of lust, so they watch, or read or listen to or whatever adult oriented content, and that's just how humans work. But at the same time, these aren't like these are shameful things, so institutional investors are not going to want to invest in that.
Use their own money.
And this is exactly why they cracked down. It's honestly kind of interesting that Twitter, for the longest time, even as a publicly traded company, allowed adult content because, again, these are taboo vices that, institutional investment firms would not want to invest in traditionally. Now, I guess since it's Twitter, they're like, oh, we'll make it special. We'll tuck it under the rug. But yeah, these are not. So yeah, that's the thing. I'm kind of surprised Twitter was allowed that to this day even.
Have liquidity providers or people who invest money into them, and they operate as a hedge fund, and then they deploy other people's money with the end goal of beating the S&P 500.
I was going to say maybe it's that people have it's individual users who are uploading it, so we're allowed to distance ourselves. But even then, like Onlyfans wasn't able to do that. Maybe they ultimately were or something. I don't know. But they were definitely worried about not being able to get away with adult content with institutional investors.
In an annual return. And a lot of people just don't want their funds to go into, investing in these vice businesses, which considers adult content, tobacco, gambling, and weapons. So regardless of the numbers, a lot of the most obvious buyers are essentially blocked from even writing the check. Then you have the operational risks, which are, Visa and MasterCard. They've already shown that they could, threaten to cut off payment processing for adult platforms. And this is exactly what pushed OF towards its failed 2021 ban. And since the platform is almost entirely reliant on subscription revenue, it has to go through payment processors that take somewhere between 5 to 10% in fees on top of the 2 to 3% fees from the most regular, Visa and Master, which is far above the usual.
Right, because my understanding is like you have the cards, like the card operators, right? Visa, MasterCard, Amex, American Express, whatever you want to call it, things like that, right? And then you have like these third-party payment processors that are like, okay, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, whatever the case may be, you're signed on in a contract with us. Cool. We're going to process it. You're going to receive it. And we're all going to be happy. But the processors probably under pressure by the card companies are like, we got to shut these. We have to have certain limitations and all that. Maybe they do it on their own because, again, they're big institutions. But,
2
at the
to
end of the day.
3% that most regular businesses are charged from payment processors. So obviously that is a tax on their margins, and now they're dependent to payment processors. And not only that, but there's also a regulatory pressure. So the UK communications regulator, they hit with a 1.4 million pound fine in early 2025 for a weak age verification practice, which, you know, might not be the biggest deal for them financially.
Now, my sense on age verification, obviously, if you're the creator, yeah, you obviously need age verification. And if you're signing up, maybe you can make the argument for that. But if it's like something that's free, like the hub is, I assume, free. I've never been on there. You know, I assume that, like, if it's a free platform that anyone can just access with no account, right, then you shouldn't be obligated to give your information. Because again, if children are going on there, it's like, yeah, that's a problem. I'm not saying it isn't, but parents have a responsibility. At the end of the day, they have a responsibility to make sure they are raising their children. So I don't think it's the responsibility of the platform. I think it's the responsibility of the parent to make sure the age it's age appropriate. This is also goes into like privacy things. Like, for example, if you have to upload your government ID just to use the internet at all, you know, then what if someone hacks into the internet and steals the information, or maybe hacks into a way where it's just like a lingering bug, right? That can just spy. It's a fly on the wall that can just spy on credit card information or identification, steal it, and you know, falsify things. Now, like I said, when you're signing up for an adult platform, it's different, I guess. But yeah, I think as a free and open marketplace of ideas, so to speak, the internet itself should not have that regulatory pressure, especially. And I think the ability to visit a website in and of itself probably shouldn't have that regulatory pressure. Again, if a child is visiting an adult website, not signing up for it, just visiting it, then it should be the responsibility of the parents to look into that and stop it, especially if the kid was stupid enough not to use incognito. Because incognito obviously is not actually incognito. You could still, you know, like Google, whatever, can still access your information and stuff. But it wipes your search history. So, and most parents aren't going to be like, okay, let's actually try to hack into Google or something.
But it's a pretty clear sign of where this enforcement is going. And then you have that exit problem, because even if someone bought it, how do they eventually sell it? Like, taking it public through a stock market listing, that's essentially impossible under the current conditions. And there's also no obvious second buyer standing by, and the insane financials don't resolve the fact that this is an asset most people in finance don't really want to be publicly associated with. And
the best I can assume is that, like, you know, you get like a Gabe Newell, you know, thing where it's like, okay, well, I'm a private investor, I have no public investment interests, so I'll buy it, kind of thing. Like, you know, Steam allows that content. Again, Steam's a privately owned company, not public, and also, you know, they can get away with it. But again, like, Gabe allows that content, so it's like, you know, it's whatever, because he's not beholden to investors, and he clearly has some level of morals of, you know, freedom of expression or something like that, I guess. Therefore, allowing Steam to harbor certain content that other platforms may be a lot more hesitant, if not just outright ban altogether.
I mean, if I was to guess, that might be one of the reasons why they tried to stop allowing adult content on their platform back in, you know, 2021.
I feel like there was a much more recent one.
Plus the whole payment processors problem. So the asking price of the platform started at about $8 billion, and no one was interested, despite their insanely high valuation. But the first...
Well, no one was interested because of the prerequisites. Now, if a private investor who didn't care about the content uploaded, they just cared about the dollars, which, I mean, That's capitalism of 101, really. Look at the revenue coming in, and there you go. If that was the investor's motivation, the dollar signs, not necessarily the content itself in any way, which I mean, content itself is irrelevant 99% of the times anyways, only when it's adult content. Then a private investor, a person, an individual, not a company obviously, but an individual could go up and be like, yeah, I'll pay 8 billion. I see the value in that.
Firm that eventually emerged as, I guess, the most serious buyer was Architect Capital, a San Francisco-based investment fund that got its start in 2020, providing credit to Latin American startups. And they had more recently become known for its tendency.
Well, I mean, I guess when $100 is like 1,000 to, you're basically investing $1,000 while only having 100. It's a lot easier. Actually, probably a lot more really, because Latin America has way lower costs of living. I mean, they also have way lower wages in return, but basically that allows Western companies to go in and be like, oh yeah, we got $100. You want it? And they're like, sure. And then they make like $100 million, and they're like, ooh, that was a great investment.
Towards complicated situations, because its founder, James Sagan, was one of the larger investors in Juul, a vaping and nicotine product that you guys are probably familiar with at this point.
Yep.
And honestly, that's just a whole nother video, because
never done nicotine products of any kind, but I'm familiar with it. That's interesting, because I guess it's not tobacco. Like, I guess the institutions could have made the argument, well, it's not tobacco, it's a chemical mixture that is completely under control. Turns out that control means a lot more of the bad chemicals, but at least they could make the argument, well, we control the chemicals, so therefore, and that allows institutional investors to invest in them where they otherwise wouldn't.
Juul completely took over the world like right before the pandemic, and it definitely did extremely well during the pandemic. And then it seems like it kind of got like banned, at least most of their flavors got banned. And then suddenly you had like Geek Bars and all these other like off-brand versions of Juul, which arguably are worse, that kind of took over everything. But yeah, long story, but essentially Juul had its products pulled by the shelf.
My understanding is Juul's like a one-use thing. Hold on. But yeah, my understanding is Juul's like a one-off use, which probably didn't help its case, because it's like, dude, I gotta just. It's like, I guess at that point, why? I guess flavor. You might as well use a regular cigarette at that point. But the thing about vapes, historically at least, is that you just pop in a thing, puff it until it's empty, take out the reusable cartridge, or take out the expendable cartridge, still have the reusable vape itself, put those in. Juul, I think, was just one like uniform cartridge, that basically like a built-in cartridge that you threw away the whole unit, which probably didn't help its case in the long term, at least. Sure, it was like slick, looked cool, all that, but over time, people are going to be like, yeah, this is kind of lame. I have to buy whole new ones every time I want to hit one up. It's like, long term, probably not the best idea.
By the FDA, and they later settled more than $1 billion in lawsuits over allegations that it was being marketed towards teenagers. So I mean, it's safe to say that Architect's brand,
I feel like a lot of teenagers were buying or were using them.
Has some tolerance for
I feel like it.
Risky and
I have no evidence. This is my personal understanding. This is my opinion. Do not sue me. Do not come after me. Do not take away my ability to do anything. Please. I beg you.
Investments. And the pitch Sagan made to the potential backers had two core ideas. First, diversify the platform, push it towards mainstream creator niches, and try to make it competitive with something like Patreon, rather than positioning it as purely an adult content site. Obviously, OF is primarily an adult content platform, and
I feel like Patreon, well, not primarily that, I think they do allow it,
majority of the traffic and subscriptions, and the money all comes from that. And without that core, it would just be a minor player when it comes to, like, you know, competing in the space with YouTube, Patreon, and Spotify. And now that Spotify also added long form content and subscription models. But I feel like it might even be smaller than Rumble if they tried to play.
I mean, they I know Spotify has podcasts. I think they were definitely, like, a couple years ago testing out doing video podcasts for just because obviously, like, Joe Rogan has a video podcast with him. You know, that's like an exclusive deal. But I think even like with like the independent podcasters through, like, you know, platforms like DistroKid, I think they did start rolling that out, like, limited. And also Rumble, yeah, that's a small platform that doesn't stand a chance against YouTube.
Play in the might even be smaller than Rumble if they tried to play in the non-adult space.
Yeah.
Also, fun fact.
And Rumble is small. It's at least with, you know, compared to Twitch, YouTube, stuff like that. And also, it doesn't help that Rumble, regardless of what they try to say, has a stigma of being a right-wing platform. Because obviously, when your platform is, and this doesn't even mean necessarily picking sides. If your platform is a predominantly left-wing or predominantly right-wing platform, and people have that impression of it, they will not go over to that platform. You know, it's especially if they're like, even moderates won't go to that platform because they don't want to hear these explicitly right-wing talking points or these or explicitly left-wing talking points, even if they do agree with some of them at least. They don't want to just hear that a bunch and a bunch and a bunch. They want to hear a multitude of things. You know, they want to be like, oh yeah, we like this guy, we like that guy. I want to turn off my brain and just watch this gaming content creator. You know, but I think the problem is, like, 90% of Rumble is political speak and right-wing political speak at that, and it's just this bubble, this insular bubble that, like, very politically charged people have. And politically charged, it's like 80-20 rule. You know, it's the 20% you're really narrowing down with just 20%. Now, don't get me wrong, 20% it's going to be loyal because they don't like the other places because they feel like it's too left-wing or whatever. But yeah, it's not really the best marketing strategy.
Since I'm mentioning Spotify, I was kind of forced to make a Spotify because some dude kept stealing my content and re-uploading it to Spotify. So if you want to enjoy my content on Spotify, you can do that as well. I'll leave a link down below.
I might have to do that.
Know that
at some point.
It's actually me and not the dude impersonating me. So if you want to leave a review there, that would also help me not get impersonated. But continuing the video, over the years, OF has genuinely been trying to build a safe for work community on the platform, including chefs, athletes, musicians, comedians, and fitness coaches. And they also launched their own safe for work streaming service called OF TV back in 2021.
Okay.
And they've actively been trying to pursue other partnerships since. But I don't really think any of it really took off, though. That is, again, still such a tiny portion of what actually is. Then you have, you know, the real competitors here, YouTube, Spotify, and Patreon,
which are all much bigger.
18 plus content. And I don't see,
and not only are they much bigger, they're much bigger in the safe for work perspective. They're very much bigger in the safe for work aspect. And that's really why Onlyfans couldn't do this.
A world where OF is actually able to compete with any of these platforms in the safer workspace because, you know, the stigma that comes with the name. It's just like, I don't know. I just can't see most creators being very
best case scenario. Because OnlyFans TV, it still has the OnlyFans label to it. It still has that stigma to it. But even if they had, like, some brand, like, you know, Facebook has Instagram. It doesn't have Facebook Reels or whatever. It doesn't have Facebook, you know, 1:1 aspect ratio photos or whatever. I don't think I've ever seen any photo uploaded to Instagram that wasn't that. You know, it has Instagram. It's not because it's not trying to be Facebook. It's not trying to rely on the stigmas and popularities and all that of Facebook. Whereas OnlyFans TV, it's like, okay, so this is like safe for work, but it's still got this stigma of the name OnlyFans to it.
Applying to be like, hey guys, follow my.
If it was called like Digital Creators TV or whatever, then sure, maybe they might be able to get a pretty decent following there, especially if they were one of the more lenient moderation platforms. But the bottom line is they didn't do that, so it's not going to work.
Unless they're paid like a massive bag. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. But that problem will be something the new owner will have to inherit. And another step that they might need to do is acquire a banking license. Because even if they acquire OF, what happens if the payment processors shut them off? That would be really bad.
It would be.
A potential solution for that would be if the platform could become its own financial institution. I mean, in theory, it could. That would definitely be a massive uphill battle for them, though. But that would at least help them reduce the 5 to 10% fee burden. Currently, the valuation on the table is $3.5 billion, with Architect taking 60% of the equity in the deal. So in just a few years, this has essentially lost $4.5 billion in valuation.
Over half.
No one wants to buy it. And the Wall Street Journal had originally reported a total deal value, including debt, at $5.5 billion, compared to an earlier $8 billion valuation just 1 year before, with slower growth and tougher sale process dragging the number down. And this number was apparently dragged down due to slower.
So there's clearly more to it than just people don't want it. It is that the actual business side is slowing down. Maybe they reached their critical point, so to speak, because that's the thing, like their point of criticality, whatever. Because here's the thing: if you're selling, lemonade, right, and there's 100 people who like lemonade, well, guess what? Once you reach 100 people who like lemonade buying your lemonade, you reach that point of criticality. Now throw in another competitor, and maybe that goes your critical point goes down 20 people, or maybe even completely halved. Who knows? But the point is, competition obviously lowers your ability to maintain, growth, and eventually you might reach just a plateau where you can't grow anymore.
Growth and just a tough sales,
which public trade and investment firms don't like. They don't want to see that plateau, because plateauing means no more value, no more added value, which means why would I invest $10 billion into a $5 billion company that's already plateaued in growth because of competition reasons, because of just overall market saturation reasons, things like that. Because I won't make my money back, at least not quickly enough to justify it.
Process. But Sagan's $500 million fund wasn't nearly large enough to cover a deal of this size on its own. So he spent months going door to door trying to assemble the capital.
The only thing I could see is that you pay $8 billion for OnlyFans, making $3 billion, whatever. And honestly, that's not horrendous, because if they're making tens of millions of dollars per employee, like if their profit margin is, $2 billion, then over the course of, like, let's say a 30-year guarantee with interest, obviously, you're going to pay that back within, honestly, you could probably pay that back within 10 years, if not less. So it's still a great deal, even if you are technically overpaying. The only problem is you're overall losing money, because again, well, I shouldn't say you're overall losing money, because you keep the business even after you pay off the debt that accumulates, and all of a sudden the money in the bank, so to speak, goes up and up and up. But at the end of the day, you on paper are going to walk away with less money than you ever going to make back or whatever, because that deficit is always going to linger, and investors are going to see that deficit and be like, we're not buying this. So yeah, obviously you don't want to buy a company where you're not going to make your own profit.
And the family offices turned out to be the most receptive audience, largely because they don't really face the same restrictions that prevent more of the, mainstream funds from joining. And the deal was supposed to close by the end of March of this year. But then Leonid passed away, and everything just got way more complicated. Obviously, I don't want to sound disrespectful here, but terrible time. Just when everything seemed to align, he passed away. And this happened on March 20th, 2026 in Florida. And the platform made an announcement with a brief statement saying that he had passed away peacefully after a long battle with cancer. But his family...
Being that young, relatively, that's actually kind of crazy if that's... Of course, I'm sure they want to make certain things maybe seem less drastic as other things or something like that. But yeah, that's crazy.
Asked for privacy and no details were shared. But what came out in the following days were how few people actually knew about how serious his condition was. And sources told the media that Leonid himself had driven the urgency behind the sale because of his health. Because the guy was apparently trying to get a deal closed specifically because he was concerned about leaving his family in a complicated situation without clear ownership. And as a part of that, in 2024, he transferred his stake of the company into a private trust, with his family being the expected beneficiaries. So obviously, if the deal with Architect Capital was already messy, it just got so much worse. Because the firm was still in the...
because it's still a privately owned company by a single individual, so to speak. Or, well, family in this case. So the rest of the family could be like, yeah, we don't want to sell. You made this deal with a previous owner. We don't want to sell it. Maybe they're like, okay, we're going through with it just as planned. I'm sure that would not make it as messy. But the fact that it sounds like it got pretty messy leads me to believe that the family definitely has conflicting interests going on that the previous owner did not.
Process of raising the equity it needed when Leonid passed. So it seems like the money simply just wasn't fully there. And suddenly now, investors who've been on the fence were dealing with a whole new layer of issues. Now you have estate laws, a different person now effectively in control of the asset, and deal terms that would now have to be renegotiated with a trust rather than the original seller. So the timeline that was already extended...
Now, I'm not sure how it would work if he didn't put it in a trust. Like, if it would still just de facto go to someone else or de facto close because there's no one left there running it, or like if it's just de facto inherited and therefore can remain open, or if it can't be or if the law says no, you have to actually explicitly state who inherited it, and then it gets into a whole legal battle with like, well, he died without having a clear plan of succession, meaning of ownership, not of leadership, obviously, meaning that now it's in this limbo where this company is technically no longer existent because the owner died, passed away, whatever you want to say, however you want to make it sound, whatever doesn't get me deplatformed. And there's no clear succession because that's the thing. Greetings from away. What are we talking about here? Yeah, we're just talking about Onlyfans. Vanguardstein. Yeah, I'm going to take that as not having teen specifically because 18 plus and also this. But yeah, again, I don't know how well, oh, that's my surname. Okay. I'm just making sure I'm just making sure there's not combination of words and spacing and things, But yeah, it's also an English company. I'm not sure how inheritance works there. Or like because it's Florida, right? So yeah, he's an immigrant, but he's American. So I'm not sure if that falls under that inheritance law, what the deal is. But yeah, trust was probably the smartest thing.
Was pushed back once again. And as of this video, the deal remains open. And the future of Onlyfans right now is genuine uncertain, which is why it seems like the Onlyfans empire is collapsing. And the company has a current CEO.
So now that I have better insight, I wouldn't say it's collapsing. It's definitely because, the CEO or the owner died. The owner's family inherited it through trust. That's basically the TLDR if you are unaware. But I'm not sure if it's collapsing yet, so to speak. It's definitely on the verge, possibly. And depending on what the family wants to do with it, we'll see.
His name is Kelly Blair, who has been running the day-to-day operations, but what's clear is there's a lot of money at stake, a lot of different interests, and a company that, despite everything working against it, keeps printing cash at a rate that makes it very hard to ignore. So, I mean, it's safe to say whatever happens next will probably not be any more bizarre than the story of this company. I mean, the company's story is how a $10,000 loan from a dad with way too much patience suddenly turned into a $7 billion a year.
Way too much patience. And it's crazy how low the original owners sold this company for. Jesus. Oh yeah, that's also a thing. Not the original owner, not the original family that owned it. And the original owner was a continuously failed entrepreneur and struck gold with this. Sold Onlyfans for $30 million, I think it was, which turned into $7 billion. It's crazy.
Empire ran by some secret Ukrainian billionaire no one has ever heard of. I mean, come on, this is such a crazy story. And I feel like this is just a situation.
I mean, yeah, it's the oldest professional on earth
That no one's been talking about, because every time I hear OF in the news, it's about one of their stars making like $1 bazillion a year.
Again, an existing e-girl on the internet making $1 billion a year. That's the thing, like a lot of these women, well, for lack of a better, being polite, I should say, aren't conventionally attractive. That aren't, and the e-girls are. And people, and that's the thing, when you pay for, this kind of thing, they want attractive women, and these e-girls are attractive and all that. So yeah, like, I mean, if I think an attractive woman is going to make money on OnlyFans regardless. That's just how it is. That's just how the world spins. Now, of course, maybe not as much as like, what's one of the, why can't I think of her name? Amaranth. Yeah, probably not as much. That's maybe not as much as Amaranth, but like if you are a conventionally attractive woman, if you're a particularly attractive woman even, and you get your start on OnlyFans, are probably going to make money. That's just how it works. But yeah, let's finish this up.
Come here and talk about it for a bit. So hey, if you're new here, my name's Atozi, or A to Z, and we talk about
A to Z,
the laughably stupid stuff and the bizarre things that happen here on the internet.
He must have heard that somewhere, because I haven't heard that.